How did banks start? They seem to have started in more or less the same way all over the world. Originally, the bank was anything but a place to borrow money from. It was simply a place to keep money in. In other words, it was the job of the banker not to lend money, but to take charge of money. You may want to know what some people handed over their spare money to someone else for. It was because the times were full of danger. The danger of either losing their money or having someone rob them of their money. So they couldn't but trust their money to those who were worthy of trust. Goldsmiths stood out among the money protectors in Europe. They had a place, usually a room in the basement, in which to put money and valuables aside. People could trust their money to them after they had made sure that the money would be safe. Now we take it for granted that interest is added to our money savings at a bank. But in those days it invariably cost people money to keep their money in a bank. In the course of time, the goldsmiths, or the early bankers, realized something. Seldom did a man of wealth draw out all his savings at a time. The money was lying unused. This is why the first bankers stopped merely protecting money and started lending money with interest. It is said that violence on television is probably a social issue which a good many Americans are as anxious about as any in terms of its influence on children. More than 1,000 studies have been carried out to find out if TV viewing has anything to do with violent behavior. A study has pointed out of late that 80% of adults have the same opinion. In that television violence does harm to society. The conclusion reached by the American Psychological Association some years ago was as follows. Watching acts of violence on television can lead to aggressive behavior from time to time in viewers who are in themselves inclined to be violent. Most researchers would probably agree with this opinion as a rule. And yet this conclusion, as a matter of fact, applies to only a small number of cases. And whether watching acts of violence has an impact on people in general or not is quite another matter. In spite of all the studies which have been carried out so far, an agreement has yet to be reached with regard to this point. The guest was satisfied with the room and sat smoking for a while beside the lamp before going to bed. Soon he heard someone knock at the door. He went to the door and opened it only to find nobody. As soon as he returned to the chair, the lamp went out by itself. Then he saw something white standing outside and knocking on his window, although his room was on the second floor. The knock got louder by degrees. He rushed to the stairs in panic and cried for help beside himself with fear. But nobody answered. At any moment, he felt, a ghost would jump at him. He tried to go downstairs in a hurry and fell off the stairs. When he came to himself, he lay surrounded by some maids. The elderly housemaid was forced to tell him the truth about the house. Though she was reluctant to tell the following story, about 30 years ago, there lived a rich landowner and his wife. They had an only daughter and she fell in love with a poor peasant. When she said that she wanted to get married to him, they got very angry and were against the marriage. As a result, she was depressed and killed herself by throwing herself into the pond at the back of the house.